ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपगतामयं ददति स्वपदान्तिकम्। मां विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नाम्ने नमस्ते सारस्वतीदेवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण. Reading from Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta volume 2 chapter 48 at home in India. Let me know if I can proceed. Okay. There were, of course, other reasons for Prabhupada's returning to India, besides meeting Indira Gandhi. His regular rhythm had become to alternate touring the West with staying in India. He was leading his movement by traveling from center to center, but for at least 5 years now, he had devoted more of his time to India. His ambitious projects in Mayapur and Vrindavan, although increasing the prestige of Krishna consciousness movement, were by no means completed, and Hare Krishna land in Bombay was still only a construction site. Unlike in America and Europe, where Srila Prabhupada achieved his objectives by inspiring devotees to carry on the management, in India he was the manager. He had to be. Otherwise, his Western disciples would be cheated and become dispirited. Pressing managerial decisions therefore brought him frequently to India. Moreover, he had a special inclination to be in India. He had a deep spiritual attraction to the holy Dham. Vrindavan was his home and Mayapur was his place of worship. And he liked the unique opportunities for meeting and influencing people in places like Bombay. His upcoming meetings with India's chief executive was the kind of opportunity that came rarely in the West. And in addition to all these reasons, Prabhupada also felt most relaxed at home there. When breaking some of his commitments to visit more cities in the US, he had returned to a disciple. I was not able to come to Atlanta because I was called here to India on urgent business. Also, I was feeling inconvenienced by so much traveling. Prabhupada often referred to New York, London, and Los Angeles as his special homes and to America as his fatherland. And when a disciple had once remarked that Prabhupada would feel more at home in India, he had replied, "My only home is the lotus feet of Krishna." Nevertheless, for whatever reason or combination of reasons, Srila Prabhupada was showering a definite preference for staying in India. Prabhupada was displeased to see how slowly the construction was progressing at Hare Krishna land in Bombay. The monsoons had flooded the foundation, and what little work had been done appeared to be of poor quality. The whole project should have been finished in 6 months, Prabhupada said, but he startled at the devotees by saying, "At least complete it within my lifetime." Shurabhi and Murthy showed him drawings for other temples. An interesting person in Nellore, near Hyderabad, was speaking of donating land, and the devotees had drawn up plans for a temple complex complete with library and dormitories. Prabhupada approved the plan. The temple buildings, he said, should be traditional, according to the Shastric directions, but the other buildings could incorporate more modern designs. He also studied and approved plans for the temple in Hyderabad and Fiji. Early the next morning, Srila Prabhupada called for Shurabhi and Murthy and again went over their various plans with detailed interest. He had little time left before his meeting with the Prime Minister, however, and the next day he left for Delhi. New Delhi, August 22nd, 1975. At 9:15 in the morning, Srila Prabhupada and several of his leading disciples arrived at the Prime Minister's home, where they were confronted by a formidable security check. 2 days before, The Prime Minister of Bangladesh had been assassinated, and Mrs. Gandhi was rumored to be next. Armed soldiers, therefore, surrounded her residence. The guards at the outer gate decided that the foreigners could not go in. Srila Prabhupada alone could enter. While one guard opened the gate, another ushered Srila Prabhupada into a car, which carried him to the Prime Minister's front door. Meanwhile, the devotees waited in anxiety by the outer gate. Always, some disciples would accompany Srila Prabhupada wherever he went. His disciples worried, almost like doubting parents, that he might need their assistance. In tiny, cramped, handwriting, Srila Prabhupada had noted down in a small address book a list of points he wanted to discuss with Mrs. Gandhi. Grant immigration for 500 foreigners. All MPs initiated Brahmanas. Sanjaya the king. Close slaughterhouses. Chanting. Meat eaters at home. No public meat eating. Prostitution punishable. No religious group except Bhagavad Gita as it is. All government officers must join Kirtan at least twice a day. Support Krishna consciousness all over the world. The most pressing item was at the head of the list. Mrs. Gandhi should grant permanent visa to Prabhupada's Western disciples in India. Just a few weeks before, some of the foreign devotees in Mayapur had been asked to leave the country. For years, Prabhupada had been asking for permanent visa whenever he met governors, members of parliament, or other men of influence. Devotees were constantly being asked to leave the country to renew their 6 months visa. The travel costs incurred and the disruption of the devotees' service seriously hampered ISKCON's work in India. Therefore, Prabhupada wanted Indira Gandhi to sanction up to 500 foreign disciples to stay permanently in India. The other points on Srila Prabhupada's list were scriptural directions for how the Prime Minister could make her leadership Krishna conscious in the spirit of the great Rajarshis of the Vedic age. These were the same tenets of God conscious leadership he preached wherever he went, and he had deep conviction that if the world's leaders would apply them, an era of peace, prosperity, and happiness would dawn. Indira Gandhi had a tendency toward authoritative control, so she should exercise it in terms of Vedic directions. Then her rule could become most effective and beneficial. A government official opened the door to Srila Prabhupada's car, ushered him into the house, and brought him before the Prime Minister. As Prabhupada entered the room, Mrs. Gandhi stood up. Although she greeted him cordially and offered him a seat, he could immediately detect that she was distracted, fearful of her life. She openly admitted it and added that this was not, therefore, a good time for their meeting. Prabhupada felt that she would have preferred not to meet at all, but was allowing it to only because she had promised. Her agreeing to see him, he felt, was an indication that she had some attraction for spiritual life, but he understood that on this visit, at least, he could not introduce the extensive advice he had been contemplating. Mrs. Gandhi contemplated Srila Prabhupada on the work he was doing all over the world. They are good boys, he replied, and he asked if she could arrange for permanent visas. She agreed, but again mentioned her present anxiety. They soon ended their talk and Srila Prabhupada left. A few days later, while still in New Delhi, Srila Prabhupada received a letter from Rameshwar. The BBT in Los Angeles was miraculously fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's order to publish 17 volumes in 2 months. The composers, editors, artists, and workers had ecstatically finished their marathon on schedule. When the first books had come back from the printers and had been offered on the altar of Rukmini Dwarakadisha, the devotees had cried in transcendental bliss, chanting again and again the mantras to Srila Prabhupada. They were feeling the potency of the order of their spiritual master and seeing themselves as instrument in carrying out what had once seemed an impossible request. Today, our composer finished the last volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita by by Wednesday next week, August 20. All volumes will be at the printer. Now they are just starting to compose the fifth canto, and the entire canto will definitely be at the printer by Vyasa Puja Day. After promising delivery of books by October at the latest, the letter was signed by about 60 devotees, your unworthy servants at ISKCON Press. On their behalf, Rameshwar stated, "We have lost all desire to do anything except to be engaged in producing and distributing your transcendental books by millions in every town and village." Srila Prabhupada wrote back the next day from Delhi. "Regarding your desire for all 12 cantos, you will get it. Rest assured. You are so much ardent desire will be fulfilled by Krishna." On August 21, Rameshwar sent Srila Prabhupada a telegram. "By the mercy of Lord Balaram Nityananda, the last volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita is leaving today for the printer. By your mercy and divine order, it is done." Although Srila Prabhupada traveled on to Vrindavan, the devotees were able to dispatch advance copies of all 15 volumes to him by his 8th birthday on August 31. Just after Prabhupada observed a ceremony in the temple, a devotee arrived in Vrindavan with the final 6 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. With great relish and satisfaction, Srila Prabhupada examined the books. He was pleased with the artwork and quickly became absorbed in reading the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He felt so inspired. He remarked to the devotees in Vrindavan that he was thinking of stopping all touring and just staying in Vrindavan translating. The reciprocation of the devotees at ISKCON Press was so sincere that it increased Srila Prabhupada's desire to reciprocate with them. He wrote to "My dear Rameshwar and company, you have taken seriously the publishing and also the distribution of these books, and that is the success of our mission. You have taken seriously this work, and I know that my Guru Maharaj is pleased with you because he wanted this. So by this endeavor, we will all go back home, back to Godhead." Although Srila Prabhupada had mentioned that he would like to sit in Vrindavan and simply translate Srimad Bhagavatam, his staying there was characterized by intensive management, not by writing. He had presided over the grand opening of Krishna Balaram Mandir 4 months earlier, and now he would demonstrate how the temple should be run. The Krishna Balaram Mandir was a Vedic temple complex at a famous holy place, and it was being scrutinized by persons already strongly opinionated on how a temple should be run. Immediately, Prabhupada found discrepancies. In the guest house, which was for guests, not disciples, he found married disciples living with their children. This was not proper, he said, and these families would have to find other quarters nearby or leave Vrindavan. He also found problems with the plumbing, municipal sewage system, the financial management, the deity worship, the cleanliness, and the devotees' behavior. Almost every area of the temple life and every devotee required special attention. In the smallest discrepancies, Prabhupada would sometimes see the essence of all problems and he would instantly point it out. And because his disciples took his words with utmost seriousness as coming directly from Krishna, his reprimands were often devastating. Prabhupada was a difficult taskmaster. A Vaishnav is said to be as soft as a rose and as hard as a thunderbolt. But Prabhupada began showing more the thunderbolt side of his personality. Sometimes a neophyte's conception of spiritual mastery is that he must always be peaceful and pleased with everything that happens, and that is a sign of his being situated in transcendental consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, however, demonstrated many modes, including anger. In its material form, anger, krodha, is described in Bhagavad Gita as occurring when one's lust cannot be fully satisfied. A true sadhu, therefore, because he does not have lusty desires, does not become possessed by anger. The Vaishnava poet Narottam Das Thakur, however, declares that anger may also be used in serving Krishna. Narottam Das gives the example of Hanuman, the eternal servant of Lord Ram, who displayed his great anger in fighting against Ravana and the other demonic enemies of the Lord. Rupa Goswami also wrote in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that a devotee should not tolerate blasphemy to Krishna or to the Vaishnavas, and that his response might justifiably be transcendental anger. Even Lord Krishna incited the anger of the non-violent Arjuna, inducing him to fight, and that fighting was transcendental, whereas Arjuna's reluctance to fight was material. Among sentimentalists and impersonalists, however, the image persists that a sadhu should never show anger. When at a large Pandal festival in Delhi, Srila Prabhupada had shown anger toward a man who spoke against Krishna. Many in the audience had misunderstood. Some had even walked out. Prabhupada's disciple could accept his anger. They even welcomed it theoretically, but to bear it was difficult. The spiritual master must cut through his disciple's false ego to engage that student in pure service. The Guru's show of anger, therefore, is good for the disciple. According to Chanakya Pandit, one should not be lenient with sons and disciples. Unless he deals strictly with them, they will spoil them. Sorry, he will spoil them. Prabhupada's anger in Vrindavan was not, however, a mere exercise in student training. He strongly desired to see the temple solidly established. He trusted that his disciples were sufficiently loyal to him to withstand the pain of chastisement and take it for what it was, mercy. Prabhupada was vigilant about the devotees' attendance at the morning devotional program in the temple. Calling for the temple president, he asked why some devotees were regularly absent. Mangalarti, he said, was very important and everyone must attend. Punctuality was also important. The exact time for Mangalarti would vary according to the clock, he said, but it must always be 1.5 hours before sunrise. Prabhupada would take his morning walk, timing it so he would be back in the temple a few moments before the deity doors were supposed to open for darshan. Once, when he was waiting with all the devotees gathered around, he looked at his watch and then asked Akshayananda Swami, "What is the time?" Aware that Srila Prabhupada was speaking his exactitude, exactitude, Akshayananda replied that it was 30 seconds after 7:30. Prabhupada shook his head and with a resigned look, he said, "It is very difficult to be a Brahman, 30 seconds late. Why are they taking so long to dress the deity?" Akshayananda explained that the deity dressing took about 1.5 hours. They are simply lazy, Prabhupada replied. How long should it take, Srila Prabhupada? Half an hour at most. Akshayananda was flabbergasted since he knew of no pujari who could come even close to that. He remained silent. What is the difficulty? Prabhupada challenged. Half an hour at most. Shortly after Prabhupada had arrived, he had noticed that the path leading to the front gate was not clean. He had complained strongly. Why this is not clean? It should be cleaned by time daybreak comes. I want to see this cleaned. The temple commander, a young Englishman from Australia named Harisauri, was supposed to supervise all the cleaning, but he had taken much of it for himself. After hearing Prabhupada's remarks about the pathway, Harisauri had resolved to rectify the problem. Immediately after Mangalarti, he would run out to the front of the temple, throw water on the stone paths, and madly run the large squeezy over the front steps and walkway, so that by the time Prabhupada came by, most of the area would be sprinkling clean. And by the time he would return from his walk, all the outdoor walkway would be clean. Srila Prabhupada didn't say anything further about the walkway, which seemed to be a positive sign. Getting the devotees to ring the bell in the temple dome in time was a major effort for Srila Prabhupada, as was getting them to ring the bell in the temple hall at all. His desire was that the bell in the temple dome should sound the hour and ring once every half an hour. The grounds watchman or chowkidar was supposed to do it, and Gunarnava was to see that he did. But for weeks there were problems, especially during the hours of the night when chowkidar tended to fall asleep. For Srila Prabhupada, undependable bell ringing revealed much about the overall temple management in Vrindavan. He made it clear, I am judging the management of this temple by the ringing of the bell. If the night watchman was sleeping and if the temple leaders could not execute a simple order, how would the temple and guest house, with all their complexities, operate smoothly? Akshayananda Swami and Guru Gunanava sometimes thought that they would never solve the problem of the bells, especially since they already had so many other things to do. But Srila Prabhupada was relentless. Whenever the bell missed by even a few minutes, he would demand to know what was wrong. During the night, he was usually the only one not sleeping, but he would wake Akshayananda or others and reprimand them if the bell failed. One night at midnight, he woke Harikesha, his traveling secretary. Do you hear that? Demanded Srila Prabhupada. Harikesh trained to hear. I don't hear anything. You can't hear it? Repeated Prabhupada. I'm sorry, but I can't hear anything. That's right. Go out there and wake up the chowkidar and make him ring the bell. Harikesh went out into the darkness, woke the sleeping chowkidar, got him to ring the bell, and then returned to sleep. And so did the chowkidar. At 12:30, Prabhupada again rang. Did you hear it again? No, Srila Prabhupada, said Harikesh. So go out and wake him again. In addition to getting the temple dome bell to ring on time, getting both the bells to operate properly was also a problem. The bells were of heavy brass, worked by a rope. Prabhupada wanted the bell in the temple to be rung constantly during the Aarti Kirtan. It took weeks for Gunarnava to arrange it. And the bell in the temple dome was particularly difficult since the rope rubbed on the stone walls and soon snapped. The thick rope, Gunanava, got simply spoiled the clarity of chim and made the ringing uneven, which Prabhupada immediately noticed. Gunanava tried a chain, too heavy, a nylon rope, it broke. Materials were scarce in Vrindavan, and each change means another delay, sometimes days. Nothing seemed to make the bell work properly. Srila Prabhupada told Gunarnava to try a pulley. Somehow, Gunarnava couldn't surrender to that particular instruction. He took the rope, he thought the rope would just jump the track. One of the devotees did purchase a pulley, but Gunarnava said it was useless. When Prabhupada called Gunarnava to his room and demanded, "Where are the pulley wheels?" Gunarnava said he had sent them back. "You rascal," Prabhupada shouted. "I am asking for police and you are sending them back?" Unanav apologized, ran out and got a pulley. It didn't work. Then he got the idea of designing a bracket with a hole in it. The next morning, Prabhupada came out of his room and walked around to the front of the temple to check on the bell. For Gunanava and others, the whole affair was becoming unbearable. "Let us hear the bell," said Prabhupada. Giving mighty tugs to the rope, a devotee rang the bell again and again. "No, that's wrong," said Prabhupada. Gunanava showed Prabhupada the wooden bracket arrangement, and Prabhupada thought it was a good idea. Gunanava even tried to improve to it by greasing the hole, and it worked for a while, but then the rope snapped again. Prabhupada's morning walks were usually filled with managerial and administrative talks, as he pointed out how the devotees could prevent being cheated, how they could save and collect money, how they could keep the temple clean, and so on. These talks were directed at specific individuals and were usually marked by criticism. Morning walks, therefore, were sometimes tense. One morning, Gunarnava invited Prabhupada to see the new book display. In a sincere effort to please Srila Prabhupada, the devotees had set up a book display just inside the entrance to the temple. There were bookshelves with built-in lighting and a display case and a counter for sales, showing off the book display with a trump for the temple manager. The lights worked and Srila Prabhupada's books were neatly placed. The GBC secretary for Vrindavan, Gopal Krishna, was also present, telling Srila Prabhupada that actually the temple was first class and that things were now getting smoothly, or now going smoothly. As Gopal Krishna, Akshayanand Swami, Gunarnava, and others pointed out the features of the book display, Srila Prabhupada was silent, then suddenly agitated. "You say that everything is first class," he said, "but I see that it is fifth class. Just see." He banged his cane on the floor and then lifted it up, pointing. "I have some 6,000 miles to tell you about a bird's nest." The assembled devotees all looked up to behold a large bird's nest within the chandelier. Birds were nesting there, and the protruding straw. Yet until now, no one had noticed the dirty unsightly presence. Srila Prabhupada had explained in his letters and books that one duty of a spiritual master is to expose the faults in his disciples, even if the fault is only slight. And the qualified disciple considers himself bereft of spiritual knowledge, always a fool before his spiritual master. He therefore considers the spiritual master's criticism as mercy. One day, Srila Prabhupada was meeting with the temple managers. He wanted practical ideas, not sentiments. He complained about overspending in Vrindavan and now in Bombay also, where construction was just beginning. You will squander money here, he said, and Shurabi will squander money there. What is your plan to stop this? What will you do? No one knew what to say. There was a long silence. Finally, Akshananda spoke up. We will become Krishna conscious. An impractical suggestion, Prabhupada exclaimed. Akshananda Swami regularly expected the thunderbolt, but that didn't keep him from wanting to be with Srila Prabhupada. On one morning walk, Prabhupada mentioned how the climate in Vrindavan was very harsh, both in summer and in winter. In winter, he said the cold would sometimes be accompanied by rain, but Prabhupada said, Akshananda, even if it rains stool and urine and pus and blood from the sky, still we should stay in Vrindavan. Stay in Vrindavan. Sri Prabhupada gave an almost impish smile and said, Oh, you are expecting? The devotees burst out laughing. Another time, Akshayananda Swami asked, Is it true that it says in the Shastra that if you pass stool once a day, you are a yogi, twice a day, you are bhogi, sense enjoyer, and thrice a day, 3 times a day, you are a rogi, deceased person? Yes, said Prabhupada, and he kept walking. After a while, he added, But don't try for passing stool once a day. Acha, responded Akshayananda. Srila Prabhupada smiled. Do you think if you pass stool once a day that you are a yogi? Harisauri had little personal association with his spiritual master. But one day in Vrindavan, Prabhupada asked to see him to point out a serious discrepancy. As temple commander Harishauri had asked an old man not to eat in front of the deity in the temple. The old man had become upset and a young Bengali man had defended him, shouting at Harishauri that he had no right to criticize anyone in the temple. Harishauri had attempted to ignore him, but the young Bengali had continued shouting and threatening to throw him out of the temple and cut off his shikha. Finally, Harishauri had twisted the young man's arm and had told the chowkidar to turn to throw him out. Srila Prabhupada soon heard of incident and called Harishauri. How inauspicious, Harishauri thought. The first time my spiritual master has ever called for me, and it's over a bad incident like this. Prabhupada did not immediately reprimand him, but first asked for his version of what had happened. Harishauri appreciated the opportunity and he began to tell the whole story. When he mentioned that the old man had asked to speak with an authority and that he had told him he was the temple commander, Srila Prabhupada interrupted. Prabhupada gave his disciple a penetrating glance. Temple commander does not mean commander in chief. Where have you heard this? About eating prasadam in front of the deity? Harishauri could not remember an exact reference and he became embarrassed. Well, I thought I read it in one of your books, Srila Prabhupada, he said. Prabhupada looked at him again. He could understand his disciple's ignorant mistake. Because of his boy's inexperience in India, he had not understood the serious implications of what he had done. Actually, because of the sensitive relationship between ISKCON devotees and the residents of Vrindavan, he should have tolerated the abuse. His was an ignorant mistake, but ignorance was no excuse. This is a great offense, said Prabhupada. He will go out and tell so many people that the foreigners have thrown him out. This is very bad. Prabhupada looked gravely at Harisauri. Now you find out where this man is staying, he said, and you bring him back here. Invite him to come back. Harisauri tried his best, looking all day for the young Bengali man who was reportedly staying at a hotel in Mathura. He was unsuccessful, however. Disappointed, he returned to the temple, and as soon as he returned, a devotee came and told him Prabhupada wanted to see him. Oh no, he thought. Now Prabhupada will really be angry. Harisauri entered Srila Prabhupada's room, which was filled with guests. This boy has come, said Prabhupada. And as Harisauri looked around, he saw the young Bengali man. The man smiled and said, Hare Krishna. They embraced and began to make apologies. So you give him this fruit, said Prabhupada to Harishauri, indicating a basket of fruit sitting on the floor. He then dismissed them and continued preaching to others in the room. The disagreement was settled, but it had been Prabhupada himself who had changed the young man's heart and rectified a volatile incident. One of Prabhupada's women's disciples in Vrindavan who got the benefit of his criticisms was Daivi Shakti, who was responsible for cleaning Prabhupada's quarters. Um, Others helped her, but she was the supervisor. When Srila Prabhupada noticed a glass that had not been polished, he asked who was doing the cleaning. And his servants replied, Daivi Shakti. Oh, she must be everything. Prabhupada, she must be everything? Prabhupada replied. It was far from being a heavy as some of his criticisms of temple managers, but Daivi Shakti took it as an indication that she should become much more attentive to the details of her service. Kishori Devi Dasi, the deity's cook, inquired from Srila Prabhupada about certain aspects of her service. Cook for Krishna as far as for a young man with a big appetite, he advised her. Krishna should get 10 puris, 4 chapatis, lots of rice, 2 samosas, 2 kachoris, 2 vadas, and 2 of each sweet. The cooked preparations should be served hot. So now you have to teach everyone how to cook, he said. You have to give everyone what you have received. Kishori would also bring a garland for Srila Prabhupada in the afternoon. To make it cooling, she would sprinkle it with water. For 2 days, Prabhupada said nothing, but on the third day he remarked, Take this away. Why do you put water like this, like that? It is very displeasing. Vishala had a practice which other devotees considered eccentric of standing at the gate and loudly reciting Sanskrit verses as Srila Prabhupada passed. One morning, Prabhupada approached the gate in a thunderbolt mood, and as usual, Vishala came forward reciting verses. Why don't you do something useful? Prabhupada said. Sweep this water away. Srila Prabhupada would sample the guest house cooking daily, often suggesting how to improve the quality. Each day, Navayogendra would bring Prabhupada a plate from the restaurant and then note down Prabhupada's comment on each preparation. The following day, the cooks would attempt to improve the food based on Prabhupada's remarks. And so it was with each department. Even when riding in the car, Prabhupada would ask, You are having it oiled regularly? You are having it lubricated and serviced? Other temples were homes away from home, said Prabhupada, but Vrindavan was home. Those who wished to live there with him, however, had to pass the test of his constant scrutiny and sharp criticism. They had to accept the hard work and austerity. And special austerities meant special blessings. When a devotee asked to be excused for his duties in Vrindavan to operate a farm in the west, Prabhupada said that even opening 20 farms would not be as important as remaining in Vrindavan. Those who persevered eventually began to see all difficulties as nectar, as had been expressed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. When difficulties arise in service, I find them source of happiness. On Radhashtami, Srila Prabhupada laid the cornerstone for a large Gurukul building adjacent to Krishna Balaram Mandir. He said that when it was built, the devotees should accommodate 500 students there from all over the world. Through the gorgeous temple, the guest house, and soon the Gurukul, Srila Prabhupada intended to draw as many people as possible to the shelter of Krishna in Vrindavan. For this end, he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his peaceful writing. And for this end, he also demanded his disciples to sacrifice. Constant traveling constant travel, Srila Prabhupada said, was becoming more and more inconvenient. One reason for his return to India. But he was by no means stopping. Unless he traveled, his movement could not remain vital and healthy. So he was prepared, despite inconvenience, to continue touring. Disciples never stopped inviting him to travel, and recently Pushta Krishna Swami had uh, asked him, Viva, laptop charger. Uh, had asked him to come to South Africa. When Prabhupada agreed, Steve had quickly arranged 10 festivals and other engagements in Durban and Johannesburg, covering a period of 3 weeks in October. Devotees on the predominantly Hindu island of Mauritius had also requested Prabhupada to visit, mentioning that the Prime Minister wanted to meet him. Prabhupada agreed, leaving Vrindavan, making brief stops in Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Bombay. He was off to Africa. Mauritius, October 1st, 1975. Relieved of management, Prabhupada was freer now to lecture to interested gathering. Receptions by the press and government ministers in Mauritius was good, but most public questions reflected a lack of sincere interest in spiritual knowledge. Is it necessary to be vegetarian? Is the soul locked in the third eye? You seem dogmatic. Is there any doubt in your philosophy? Nevertheless, people were respectful and considered Srila Prabhupada an important leader and spiritual authority. He remained there a week. Durban, October 5th. This was Prabhupada's first visit to South Africa. For 2 years, the devotees there had been traveling to get him a visa, but the government was wary of foreign missionaries. The bureaucratic delays, therefore, had taken months. The devotees had even had to send copies of Prabhupada's books for the government officials to review. Every night for a week, Srila Prabhupada delivered public lectures to the crowds of at least 1,000, mostly Hindus, but also many whites. After Prabhupada's lecture at the University of Durban, Westville, a member of faculty tried to discredit the lecture by stating, well, this is just the Hindu concept. Repeatedly, Srila Prabhupada tried explaining how the principles of Krishna consciousness were universal and scientific, but the man kept replying that it was Hindu culture. Dr. S.P. Olivier, rector of the university, sympathized with Prabhupada's representation and stayed afterward to speak at length with him. I think you are quite right, Dr. Olivier began, but very few people tonight got the point you were trying to make, that this is a scientific reality. Johannesburg, October 12th. Srila Prabhupada arrival at the Johannesburg airport was culturally extraordinary for South Africa, while men bowing down before an Indian. The devotees had borrowed a yellow Mercedes and had parked it in a spot reserved for state ministers and other dignitaries. No one objected. As Srila Prabhupada arrived, devotees threw flower petals. Some young European onlookers bowed down, and the police, impressed by all the protocol, saluted Srila Prabhupada and respectfully opened the door to his Mercedes. As in Durban, Prabhupada's lectures were well attended. He was keen to have his books sold during these programs, and he would go to the book booths and also his disciples. Are they buying the books? He had concerned that the Europeans, not just the Hindus, buy the books. Prabhupada spoke strong against racial discrimination, but unlike Mahatma Gandhi, who had been imprisoned in South Africa for his outspoken views, Prabhupada spoke on the authority of scripture. What is this black-white business? He said. It is nonsense. It is the bodily concept of life. In South Africa, such statements would ordinarily have been considered volatile politics, yet everyone appreciated Srila Prabhupada because he spoke on a purely spiritual level. One of Prabhupada's disciples in South Africa, Vrindavan, asked privately how to deal with racial issues in Johannesburg. The only solution, Prabhupada said, was Mass Harinam Sankirtan. When Riddha asked about the starting of a farm community, Prabhupada replied, "Don't be so eager to move out to the country. The preaching is in the cities," he said. He was very pleased with what his disciples had done in South Africa within such a short time. While Prabhupada was in Johannesburg, Rameshwar and company fulfilled their promise and reached him with copies of both volumes of fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada took the books with him to his lecture at one university and quoted from them, speaking on Lord Rishabdev's instructions, beginning with verse in which Rishabdev advises his sons not to live for sense gratification. Mauritius, October 24th. Prabhupada had returned to meet with the Prime Minister. As a friendly gesture, the Prime Minister had sent a chauffeured car for Srila Prabhupada's use in Mauritius. One day, Prabhupada was leaving to take a ride in the countryside, but as he was about to enter the car on right side, Pushta Krishna Swami suggested, "Srila Prabhupada, come to the other side. It's safer." And Prabhupada complied. For half an hour, they rode through the beautiful countryside, past sugarcane fields, mountains, and the ocean. At one point, they stopped and walked along a cliff beside the sea. When they returned to the car, Brahmananda Swami opened the right side door and Prabhupada said, "No, the other side is safer," just as Pushta Krishna had previously suggested. A few minutes later, as Prabhupada's black Citroen was uh, rounding a curve, a Volkswagen suddenly appeared, heading toward them in the same lane. Prabhupada was seated behind Pushta Krishna and Brahmananda was seated behind the driver. The moment before the Volkswagen had appeared, Srila Prabhupada had sat up, cross-legged, planting his cane against the floor of the car to support himself. As the Volkswagen rushed toward them, the chauffeur braked, swerving to the left, but the Volkswagen sped in the same direction. There was a head-on collision. Pushta Krishna's head hit the windshield, cracking the glass. The driver's head also slammed against the glass, and his face was covered with blood. In the back seat, Srila Prabhupada remained sitting, his face set gravely. Brahmananda, in shock, suddenly embraced Prabhupada as if to protect him, although the danger had already passed. Brahmananda then jumped out of the car to try and flag down a motorist, and Pushta Krishna got out and opened the back door, where he found Prabhupada with his face bruised, his leg bleeding, and pieces of glass scattered at his feet. Prabhupada did not speak or indicate how he felt. Suddenly, Pushta Krishna realized that the car, disabled on a curve, was in a dangerous position. So he joined Brahmananda in the road to caution motorists and to try to get someone to stop. The Citroen and Volkswagen were totaled, and the man and woman in the Volkswagen were both injured. Motorists soon stopped, and when the injured persons have received help, Prabhupada and the devotees got into a car and rode back to the temple. Harikesh was waiting anxiously, wondering why Srila Prabhupada was so late. When suddenly Prabhupada entered, walking very stiffly, saying nothing. When Harikesh saw all three were injured, he cried out, "My God, what happened? What happened?" But Srila Prabhupada just walked to his quarters and sat down silent. A devotee brought bandages for the obvious injuries. Prabhupada's chin, hand, and leg, and Pushta Krishna's and Brahmananda's heads. Srila Prabhupada had said nothing since the incident. Finally, he spoke. Asan api kleshada asa deha. And he translated, "As soon as you accept this material body, there are so many difficulties." We were sitting peacefully in car and the next moment crash. He talked briefly about the collision. Brahmananda Swami told how just before the accident, Prabhupada had braced himself with his cane, preventing perhaps more serious injuries. "Get some resin and turmeric," Prabhupada said. "Mix it together with a bit of lye and heat it." Prabhupada was again speaking Bhagavad philosophy and practical medical remedies. It remained a frightening event, however, and Prabhupada asked the devotees to have kirtan. Krishna had saved them, he said. Considering that both cars had been destroyed, the injuries were negligible. Prabhupada sat like a battle hero, anointed with in three places with yellow uh, poultice, poultice, while Harikesha read aloud from Chaitanya Charitamrita the disappearance of Haridas Thakur. Then Srila Prabhupada began talking about the dangers of traveling, questioning the advisability of his extensive touring. His mission of translating Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vaishnava literature was too important for him to be risking his life traveling in automobiles. He had been considering a visit to Nairobi before returning to Bombay, but now he said he would cancel his visit. He said he had never wanted to leave Bombay, but because they had made so many arrangements in Africa, he had come. Perhaps the accident was a sign that he should go back to India. The next morning, with Brahmananda Swami and Pushta Krishna Swami hobbling along, Prabhupada went on his morning walk as usual. Although he favored his injured knee. Again, he discussed with his disciples whether he should go on to Nairobi or return to India. Shavana, the president of ISKCON Nairobi, argued that Prabhupada should go to Nairobi. The devotees there were expecting it, and he said, and they had many arrangements. If Prabhupada cancelled now, he would probably not come back for a long time. Others, however, argued that there was no question of asking Srila Prabhupada to keep going now after this traumatic accident. He should go directly to Bombay. Prabhupada heard both opinions, but he was more affected by the consideration of disappointing the devotees in Nairobi than of recuperating after the accident. He decided to go to Nairobi. After only a few days in Nairobi, Prabhupada became anxious to return to India. Reports were reaching him about mismanagement in Bombay and about building materials being stolen from the property through a conspiracy involving the workers, the storekeeper, and chowkidars. When Srila Prabhupada heard this, he became so morose he stopped translating. He even stopped eating. Although thousands of miles from Bombay, he was feeling the pain more than any of the devotees there. Many of them in fact, were not even aware that the theft was taking place. When Brahmananda Swami asked Prabhupada why he wasn't eating, he replied, "How can I eat when my money is being stolen?" Bombay, November 1st. Srila Prabhupada's plane from Nairobi arrived in Bombay at 1 a.m. Yet, even at such an early hour, he was greeted at the temple by a gathering of intimate life members, disciples, and even some of the tenants on the land. When the group followed him to his room, he confided that he had had a serious accident, and he even showed them the scar on his knee. He said he was relieved to be back. In a letter from Bombay, he wrote, "The accident was very disastrous, but still Krishna saved. Perhaps I may stay here for some time for finishing our temple construction on this land." ISKCON Bombay was Srila Prabhupada's office, and he immediately got to work. He fired the engineer, whom he held responsible for the poor, slow work and stolen building material. At first, Prabhupada had tried to avoid hiring a construction company by having Surabhi oversee the whole project, assigning work to various subcontractors, but that wasn't working. Srila Prabhupada wanted a change, but there was no clear alternative. "We have come to Krishna consciousness for a life of eternal bliss," he said to Surabhi, "but instead of eternal bliss, I am suffering eternal anxiety." He appealed to Surabhi, Giriraj, and others to do something. One day, a life member, a construction engineer, visited the site and told Srila Prabhupada the temple and hotel could easily be completed in 6 months. Srila Prabhupada then berated Surabhi, who said that 6 months' time was not enough. "Now I am nowhere," thought Surabhi, "I am losing my service." Then another life member, Mr. Omkar Prakash Der, the chief engineer and ECC, one of India's largest, most reputable construction companies, came to Sunday feast and examined the work. Appalling at the poor quality, he said that after 2 or 3 years it would fall apart. Giriraj, impressed with the idea of hiring Bombay's biggest, most competent construction firm, spoke with Prabhupada, who was also interested. At first, Surabhi resented that the work was being taken out of his hands, but after meeting with Mr. Dev, he also liked the proposed change. The contract was made with ECC, and Mr. Dare presented a progress chart detailing each phase of the work and showing when it would be completed. Srila Prabhupada was pleased with their professional method despite the higher cost. Now the work would be done as professionally, as quickly as possible, and as quickly as possible. And this was the what mattered most. Prabhupada stayed for the greater part of November and construction progressed quickly. There was no question of cutting corners to save a little money, Prabhupada explained to Shurabhi. The temple had to be a beautiful jewel so that people from all over India would want to come and stay. During the Vrindavan construction, Prabhupada had emphasized why so much, why not just simple? But now he was stressing why not more? The temple should be opulent and ornate, with marble everywhere. The hotel should be the finest, with beautifully furnished rooms and an elegant restaurant. And the air conditioned theatre building should be one of the best in Bombay. Why not marble on the floors? Asked Prabhupada, speaking of the hotel rooms. It's going to be very expensive, said Shurabi. Don't worry about the money. Prabhupada said, can we put marble on the floor? Then do it. Shurabi did it, but tried to save money by putting a cheaper stone in the hotel hallway. When Prabhupada saw it, he was displeased. He said, he should have been, it should have been all marble, he said. Funds for Bombay construction came primarily from the sales of books in America, and Srila Prabhupada was regularly receiving reports. On November 18th, Rameshwar sent a telegram with some of the good news. 1 million copies of BTG just printed. Devotees gone wild. Promised to distribute all within 1 month. Spanish Gita just off the press, bringing hundreds of millions to your lotus feet. All possible by your mercy only. When the temple president from ISKCON Denver wrote asking about the starting a jewelry business, Srila Prabhupada wrote back, disapproving. Why are they doing business? This creates a bad atmosphere. We shall only do one business, and that is book selling. That's all. As soon as you become karmis after business, then spiritual life becomes damaged. This business should not be encouraged anymore. Doing business and not Sankirtan, that is not at all good. Sankirtan is very good, but Grihasthas under condition can do other business only if they give at least 50%. But Sankirtan is the best business. Prabhupada envisioned that book distribution could not only finance Bombay construction but could also support his even more ambitious plans for Mayapur. Book distribution was good business and it was the best preaching. It was Prabhupada's formula. American money combined with India's spiritual culture, and he encouraged Rameshwar to motivate the Sankirtan in the USA in accordance with this principle. America has the money, so this is cooperation between the blind man and the layman. Men. It will make good relations between India and America. The next chance I have for meeting with Indira Gandhi, I shall inform her about how much foreign exchange we are sending. After receiving your encouraging assurance that as book distributions increases, the amount BBT sends will also increase. We are now going to attempt at Kurukshetra project and the Jagannath Puri project. For the time being, we are spending in India, but eventually we will spend everywhere. This will greatly enhance the American spiritual position. Always remain dependent on Guru and Krishna, and your progress will always be assured. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna Prabhu and Mataji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Thank you, Roji. Very nice session, Prabhuji. What was very touching is like, though Prabhupada, went through that, accident, he was still staunch.
Yeah.
And maybe common person would say, would start immediately accusing the Lord himself, saying that like finding out reasons that he's in full service. And so very, very elevated and really amazing. We grip for small issues and we say why God creates these kind of things. But I think this session is very very motivating to all of us to see how the true devotees have progressed. Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I think through this chapter, I think when you were reading, I could imagine how Prabhupada used to chastise his devotees for their betterment.
Yeah, the spirit of Guru is the program.
Yes, Prabhuji. And the other point was, I think, around
One thing, Dina, when you're saying about this chastisement, right? I think the secret of success of disciples is chastisement by a person who can correct. That is the
Yeah.
secret. So it's not just chastisement, because there are so many people who chastise for what we don't do correctly. But then Guru means one who is helping through chastisement. Yeah, by chastisement, what is he doing? A Guru is doing is he is just like polishing a stone can only shine. Yeah, if you don't polish the stone, it won't shine. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yes,
go ahead. You're saying something.
Yes, Prabhuji, exactly. I mean, I think the other point was when Prabhupada wanted to have the quality of construction for the Mumbai temple to be top notch. I think it was very fascinating that I think most of the amount was coming from book distribution in America. 1 million books selling at that time is just virtually impossible, I think. So that amount, using it for temple construction in India, I think nobody will believe it actually if we say.
Yeah.
that.
And not only that, if you remember, we read last week about there are already projects, right? For example, in Dallas, and there are also
Yes,
big
Prabhuji.
temples that they bought, and they also need to save or pay that. In addition to that, they were able to support temples in India. When I was reading this, I came across the thought came like, I don't know if you have seen some videos where they say ISKCON is collecting all the donations and passing it to the US. Yeah,
Yes. Maneka Gandhi from BJP raised this.
Recently, but I think this was
Yeah.
very, very old. That there used to be some YouTube videos where saying, what happens to all your money? This is sent to America and all. It's actually the other way.
Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji.
Or in fact, wherever the need. Yeah.
Yeah, Prabhuji, I think this comes from really ignorant. People in absolute mode of ignorance just want to make a statement.
Yeah. Who want to just hum?
Prabhuji, I think your voice is breaking, or is it my internet connection?
From my side, on my side also, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Breaking.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, we can hear now.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, because my laptop is went out of battery. So one thing I wanted to, I think Dina, you were saying something, right?
Nothing, Prabhuji. You are about to say something that regarding this allegation.
Yeah, I can tell about my own situation. Our Guru Maharaj never chastised me as such, except it was in Vrindavan.
Yeah,
And
Rupa Mataji told me once.
yeah, and whatever we are reading now, everything where it was in Vrindavan, but then the beauty is that devotees were still happy. The disciples now were very happy. I liked it very much.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So yeah, all those things are for advancement. Yeah. But so it gives us an opener, right? Eye opener. Okay, okay, we can't be there is something that we are not very perfect or we are not doing it properly. So we only take them and then apply that next time. And I
Yes,
think
Prabhuji.
neither the Guru wants to be in that situation because Guru always wants to be having loving relationship and very compassionate, very merciful. But as we saw in this line, there was saying that this is all about what this is called is mercy.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the other point was when Prabhupada wrote those 10 points to talk to Indira Gandhi, I mean, it was also very, I mean, how do we say that? On dot. I mean, maybe some people can say it's very, I mean, he wants to just put it very straightforward, those 10 points. And
actually, when I was reading that, I was counting how many of these are 10, right? These were like 10 commandments of ISKCON, for strong governance.
Yes, Prabhu.
Just like in Christianity, how there is this 10 commandments, right? So
yes,
like that.
yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhuji. I think people with that authority only can actually place it, because today, I don't know, coincidentally, in the morning I was reading about Sri Madhvacharya in ISKCON Desire Tree. I think somehow some topic came between me and Varsha, and I was reading. And even in Madhvacharya's life history also, he wanted to establish the Dvaita philosophy. He want to really tell that Krishna is only the supreme personality of Godhead and nobody else. So I think during that age and time also, when there are so many Mayavadis and atheists growing, so I think people with that divine grace can only can really place those principles and beliefs and go for that preaching. So I think today when we were reading, I mean, how Srila Prabhupada came up with those 10 points to talk to the Prime Minister. Yeah, I think it's it's only with, I mean, Krishna only sends his representatives to the planet, to our planet.
So one thing is that when we were reading foreign disciples getting only 6 months visa, it reminded me of our tourist visas in Germany, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So even if we invite some guest now, he can or she can only stay for 6 months. So it's something like that. It was there in those days.
Yes, Prabhuji, and also to tell the Prime Minister that stop the slaughterhouses. Only Bhagavad Gita preaching should be there. Yes.
I mean, how it would have been if really that discussion would have happened with the Prime Minister at that time. Somehow it didn't happen. Otherwise, we would have, Prabhupada would made some long-term commitments from the government. At least out of those 10, if Prabhupada is very, very apt in catching what we want. If not 10, at least Prabhupada, just like if not 64, what are those 5? If not those 5, what is the 3? Like that. If not 10, at least he would have got 1, which would have made the remaining 10 possible. We missed that.
Yes, to add, Prabhuji, if I may, I think that could have also changed the course of our nation because, maybe I don't want to get political here, but Mrs. Gandhi, really didn't act in the interest of, the Hindus. But I think if it was the PM of today, then it would have applied. Hi, Prabhuji.
Yeah, and if you see that way, then Satish Prabhu, we can see how Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, yeah, and some senior Swamis, yeah, who are Prabhupada disciples, are very, very much in the spirit of changing India for good, for Krishna consciousness. So they are, yeah, we have Modi ji who can hear, we have good relationships and also vision from Bhagavad Gita, and also the disciples of Prabhupada have already took it that they will not leave any stone unturned, right? So they can turn everything in favor of Krishna consciousness, whether it is political connections or if it is, what do you call this, business, merchandise connections. Every connection we use it to connect to Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, absolutely, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Yeah, so in fact that means Prabhupada has done, yeah, if not through Gandhi, yeah, through someone else. He has preserved that legacy through his disciples, and then it's available even now. Yeah. Okay, what else? Yeah, if nothing, then thank you very much for joining. Vanchakalptarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. His Holiness Satsvarup Goswami Maharaj